G'day mates, it's Busta here. So before the video begins, I just wanted to let you all know that I'm going to return to the long form content again. This means I'll be posting 1 or 2 longer videos a week with a compilation of true scary stories being featured. The reason for this is that, through my assessments, I've found that the longer you guys watch, the better the channel does. Plus, regardless of YouTube's algorithm, I don't want to lose my roots. This channel was built because of what we have here, and I don't want to lose that, for anything, even if it means taking a hit from the algorithm. So, if you want to support this channel and if you want to help this channel grow, please be sure to watch this video all the way through and feel free to go and watch more of my videos straight after this one to help out if you wish. Also, I've decided that I'm going to take my series stories over to Twitch permanently to diversify a little. So if you would like to listen to the series stories, please open a tab in your window by right-clicking the link to my Twitch account in the description below, and hit the follow button to be notified of when I'm live streaming and when new videos are out. It's completely free to follow and make an account too. I also will likely be doing a scary story night live stream there too, where I'll be listening to stories, talking and having a nice night with all of you guys once a week. And if this sounds like something you would enjoy, be sure to follow me on Twitch. And finally guys, I want to do more subscriber stories and less Reddit stories moving forward. So if you want the chance to have your story featured on the channel, please send it through to my email, which is also in the description below. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. I hope you enjoy the video, and without further ado, let's begin. January 22nd, 1970. Subject 4 has scraped all the skin off of her face. Her white jumpsuit is saturated with blood. I pleaded with Dr. Blackburn to release her and send her to the hospital, but he just scoffed at me.
She's been such a good subject. Why would I get rid of her?
Dr. Wilson is getting worse. Her breathing is labored and her skin is hot with fever. Every hour, Blackburn sends one of us down there with an odd suction device so that we can remove the blood from the poor woman's nose and mouth. I know Blackburn is only keeping her alive so that he can continue the experiment. January 23, 1970. We all gathered in the control room today when Dr. Blackburn stormed in, looking more furious than I've ever seen him.
You!
He bellowed, pointing at Dr. Hart.
You were going to rat me out, weren't you?
Dr. Hart just glared at him. I had to. What you were doing is completely amoral.
I thought I could trust you.
Well, that was before you turned into a monster. The rest of us were frozen in place, completely silent. We knew what was going to happen, but we were still scared to death.
If I'm a monster, so are you.
Dr. Blackburn snapped, and I was given a strong sense of déjà vu. You're right. Dr. Hart pressed his lips into a thin line. I'm not a good man. I've done many things I'm not proud of. But I also have a moral compass, and there are lines I'll never cross.
So then, what are you going to do about it?
Blackburn sneered. Dr. Hart's eyes narrowed dangerously. I'm going to tell the police exactly what you've been doing. Hell, I'll bring them straight to this damn laboratory so that they can see for themselves.
You won't be able to do that if you're dead.
Dr. Blackburn hollered and charged at Dr. Hart like an angry bull. He tackled the taller man to the floor and began punching him. Stop! I yelled, sparking a chain reaction. Everyone began yelling at once. A few tried to pull Blackburn off of Dr. Hart, but once again, the security guards stepped in and held us back. We could only watch helplessly as Dr. Hart was beaten to a bloody pulp. Once his former assistant stopped moving, Dr. Blackburn stood up, wiping his hands on his lab coat. He then produced a shiny silver pistol from his pocket and shot Dr. Hart in the head. Blood, brain matter, and bone fragments scattered in every direction. I lurched forward and vomited all over my shoes. Dr. Blackburn turned to face us, his eyes burning with the flames of hell.
Does anyone else plan on reporting me?
We all shook our heads, too terrified for words.
Good.
Dr. Blackburn's lip curled.
Because if one of you betrays me, I'll make your death slow and painful.
January 30, 1970. Another hiatus. I imagine Dr. Blackburn spent the time covering up Dr. Hart's murder. Witnessing the event has left me numb, almost desensitized, and that really alarms me. Today, we all returned. By some miracle or curse, Dr. Wilson is still alive. All the subjects are alive, even Subject 4, despite missing half the skin on her upper body. Dr. Blackburn has carelessly wrapped her in bandages, which are soaked with blood and pus. I've never met anyone who cares so little for human life. I've resigned myself to the horror. I numbly sit on watch, take notes, and try, unsuccessfully, to interview the subjects. I no longer have hope that I can somehow stop this. Call me a coward, but I find acceptance easier than fighting back. Dr. Blackburn was right. I am a monster. January 31, 1970. Dr. Wilson passed away last night, and Dr. Blackburn sent me to dispose of the body, claiming that he was too busy writing up a report of his findings so far. I simply stood and nodded as I listened to his instructions, and then I went downstairs. Dr. Wilson lay on her cot, her swollen, bruised body stiff and cold. I unlocked the metal cuff on her wrist and scooped her up, her blonde hair tumbling over my arms. I had a lump in my throat as I packed her body in a black garbage bag and placed it in a room that resembles a walk-in freezer. It was empty. I couldn't bear to look. I couldn't save her. Why couldn't I save her? February 1, 1970. Dr. Blackburn thanked me last night for getting rid of the body.
You've been a good help, Dr. O'Callaghan,
he said. His approval made me sick. Thank you, I muttered anyway. Dr. Blackburn, may I ask you something?
What is it?
What's the purpose of this experiment? I expected him to shut me down, but instead, he smiled.
Do you really want to know?
Yes. Dr. Blackburn switched off the monitors and turned to face me.
I'll tell you, Dr. O'Callaghan, but you better keep quiet.
I promise.
Good.
He leaned back in his chair, clasping his hands on his lap.
The purpose of this experiment is to learn how long it takes for the human mind to descend into insanity.
Excuse me?
You heard me. Through a combination of isolation, brainwashing, and physical punishment, I am driving the subjects over the edge. So far, it seems to be working.
But that's not... I trailed off, at a loss for words.
It may sound amoral, as Dr. Hart would have put it, but trust me, Dr. O'Callaghan, what this experiment uncovers will only aid us psychologists in our scientific advancement.
But what happens to the subjects after this is all over? I asked. Do they recover? Dr. Blackburn shrugged.
I don't know, and to be honest, I don't care. All that matters is that I get the results I need. They mean nothing to me.
That shouldn't have surprised me as much as it did. I know very well by now just how evil Blackburn is, but hearing him speak so callously made me shudder.
You've gone pale, Dr. O'Callaghan. Is everything all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Are you going to report me?
No.
Good, because I would have no choice but to kill you if that was the case. You know that, right?
Dr. Blackburn flashed his white-toothed grin at me, turned the monitors back on, and went back to observing his subjects. It wasn't until I left the building that I finally stopped shaking. February 2nd, 1970. Oh shit. I can't believe this is happening. I was on watch last night. I vaguely remember falling asleep on the job and hearing the door slide open. When I woke up, I was in a cell, chained to the bed. Dr. Blackburn stood over me, smiling. "What have you done?" I gasped.
You're one of my subjects now.
He smirked.
A replacement for Dr. Wilson.
You bastard!
I pulled at the chain, but it didn't give.
How could you?
Do you really think I'd let you roam free after I told you the true purposes of this experiment? You walked right into a trap, Dr. O'Callaghan.
You chose to tell me.
I yelled.
Don't put this on me.
Dr. Blackburn just laughed.
You're such a fool. Since the beginning you've been suspicious. Now, I usually kill troublemakers like you. But you, Dr. O'Callaghan, you're different. I like you. So I've decided to keep you alive. Well, at least for a while.
No,
I muttered. In the next cell, one of my fellow prisoners began to moan. Dr. Blackburn kicked the wall hard and stalked out. I've been sitting down here for hours, and all I can think about is my family, my wife, and my children. Without me there to protect them, how can I be sure that they'll be safe? For all I know, Dr. Blackburn has already done away with them. Oh, fuck. What the hell have I done? February 5, 1970. I'm not sure I have the date correct. I've been keeping track of days, but it's getting hard now. Every hour blends seamlessly into the next. It's impossible to distinguish or separate. Dr. Blackburn comes down 3 times a day to bring us meager meals of bread and water, and to let us go to the bathroom. He injects us with this mysterious compound that makes us limp and exhausted. For several hours each day, he plays a recording of his voice over the speaker, saying terrible, vile things that make me shudder. This is what Dr. Wilson went through. She went through this horror, and I couldn't save her. My former colleagues have made no attempt to rescue me. I suppose they have all been brainwashed, or are simply too terrified to try anything. I can't say I blame them. We've all seen what Dr. Blackburn is capable of. We all know he's a monster with no compassion or mercy. I wonder how I'll ever get out of this alive. February 6, 1970. Early this morning, at least I think it's this morning, Dr. Blackburn came down to my cell. I tried twisting away from him, but he gripped me by the shoulders and turned me around.
I suppose you miss your children, Dr. O'Callaghan.
I kept my mouth shut. I wasn't going to seize the bait.
You have 3, right? 2 little boys and a girl.
I gritted my teeth, fists clenched. I refused to look Dr. Blackburn in the eye.
Your daughter, her name is Charlene, right? I've heard you gush about her to the other fools upstairs. She's very beautiful, correct?
Shut up!
I hissed.
Don't you dare talk about Charlene!
Does she have your green eyes? Is she a redhead like you?
Stop!
How old is she? 11? 12? It's a shame that she's so young. She'd make such a good toy.
Shut the fuck up!
I bellowed. Dr. Blackburn kicked me in the ribs, hard. I fell hard to the floor with a groan, and the monster laughed and kept talking.
Maybe I'll drop by your house tonight and sneak into little Charlene's room.
He sneered.
I'll rip off her nightdress, and...
I kicked him so hard that he lifted off his feet and flew across the room, hitting the wall with a terrible crash. I stood on my knees, my face hot, seething with fury. Dr. Blackburn sat up with a groan, rubbing the back of his head, blood trickling from his broken nose.
How dare you!
He hissed.
How dare you!
I snarled.
If you put a fucking hand on my daughter, I'll...
You'll do what, Dr. O'Callaghan? You can't exactly accomplish much when you're chained up.
I began to sob, tears of fury and frustration rolling in hot acidic rivers down my cheeks. Dr. Blackburn slammed the door on his way out, and I lay down on the floor, helpless. I kept telling myself Dr. Blackburn was just trying to wind me up, but knowing him, he could very well harm my daughter. I've put my family in danger. How could they ever forgive me? February 7, 1970.
I can't die like this.
February, unknown date, 1970.
Something is wrong. I've got some sort of infection from Dr. Blackburn's needle. I have a high fever and my jumpsuit is plastered to my body with sweat. I can't eat. I can't move. I spend the day slipping in and out of consciousness. I don't even know what's real anymore. I don't know if the other subjects are even still alive. I hope they are. I hope we all get out of this alive, but how can any of us survive this?
February, unknown date, 1970.
Dr. Blackburn has begun visiting my cell every day to tell me about all the horrible things he plans to do to my family. I'm too weak to fight back. Dr. Blackburn knows it. He loves seeing me so vulnerable. And I hate myself for being so pathetic. I don't know how long I've been down here. It feels like weeks. Oh, it's probably only been more like several days. I've lost an alarming amount of weight. I can't imagine how terrible I must look. Maybe I deserve this for taking part in Dr. Blackburn's experiment in the first place. Who am I kidding? Of course I deserve this.
Unknown month, unknown date, 1970.
I can't die here. 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 I can't die here.
Unknown date, unknown time, 1970.
It's so hot. So hot. Have I died and gone to hell or something? Somewhere far away, someone is screaming as if they're being tortured to death. What if I'm next? Help me. Help me. Someone help me.
Unknown date, unknown time, 1970.
Dr. Blackburn is growing increasingly deranged. He's become paranoid and accuses me of planning to run my mouth. I don't know why he thinks that, since I'm probably never getting out of here anyway. Last night, Dr. Wilson came to me. It may have been a dream, but it felt so damn real. She wailed about how Dr. Blackburn had betrayed her, and that if I just told someone, I wouldn't be locked in this cell. I didn't try to defend myself, because I knew she was right. I don't know if the remaining subjects are still alive. Maybe it's for the best if they're not. Death would be a solace compared to this hell.
Unknown date, unknown time, 1970.
Dr. Wilson, Dr. Hart, the deceased subjects, they haunt me day and night. They're desperate, trapped in this world. They want nothing more than to cross over to the afterlife. I don't know what to do. How can I help them? Today, I pleaded with Dr. Blackburn to just let me go. He cursed and spat at me and stormed out. When he returned hours later, he said to me,
"You're going to die here. Either you waste away, or I'll kill you myself."
This isn't even an experiment anymore. This is just the sick game of an evil, twisted man. Dr. Blackburn, burn in hell. I've given up on dating my entries. I can't even keep track of time anymore. I can't even tell the difference between night and day. Some hours ago, Dr. Hart's ghost came to me. He told me that he regrets sticking by Dr. Blackburn for so long. I asked him why he never reported that monster, and he sighed. He was brilliant. I let my admiration cloud my common sense. Then he looked me right in the eye and said, "If you get out of this, Dr. O'Callaghan, make sure Blackburn gets what's coming to him." I'm not getting out of this, I said. I'm going to die here.
There's hope, Dr. Hart said and vanished.
Now my hallucinations are trying to motivate me. I've gone mad. This was Dr. Blackburn's goal, wasn't it? Yes. Well, I have to hand it to the bastard. He's done a damn good job of making me lose my mind. The screaming. My fellow subjects began screaming a while ago, and they haven't stopped. My ears are filled with the sounds of pure agony and horror. I don't know what's going on, and I'm sure I don't want to. I've been thinking of my wife. Her name is Catherine. We were high school sweethearts. She was so beautiful as a teenager, and she's still beautiful in her 40s. She's a wonderful mother. I'm sure she's called the cops. That means they must be looking for me. But what if Dr. Blackburn made up some story? The screams. Fuck the screams. They won't stop. Why won't they stop? Catherine, the screams. Make it stop. The screaming finally stopped. And the silence that's followed, it's equally unsettling. Dr. Blackburn entered my cell, visibly out of breath. What the fuck did you do? I hissed, just as I noticed the bloody axe in his hand.
This experiment is over,
he declared.
What do you mean?
The experiment is done. I could let you go, but I don't trust you not to tell.
My legs were burning from the urge to run, but I couldn't, not when chained to the bed. I began pulling at the metal links, desperate to escape as Dr. Blackburn raised the axe above his head.
Any last words?
He sneered.
No, please, no, no!
I threw myself forward hard, and my hand popped out of the cuff. I stared, astonished. The only explanation I could think of was that all the weight I'd lost had made it easier for me to slip my hand out. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. I had to leave. I rolled out of the way and stood up. The axe hit the floor, leaving an ugly gash in it. Dr. Blackburn gave an angry shout and started after me, but I was already halfway down the hall. I don't know how I did it. I was weak with dehydration, still lethargic from fever, but I ran. I flung myself into the elevator, the doors closing on the glint of Blackburn's axe. When I stepped out of the control room, I was horrified to find all of Blackburn's remaining colleagues dead, or at least what was left of them. They had been brutally dismembered, chopped into pieces. I charged through the field of the gore, only for someone to grab my shoulder and pull me back.
How dare you run away?
Dr. Blackburn bellowed, throwing me against the control panel. He swung the axe down, and once again, I managed to roll away. I wasn't quick enough this time, however, as the blade nicked my shoulder. I felt no pain. I was too full of adrenaline and desperate to escape. I reached the doors, only to hear footsteps behind me. Dr. Blackburn. Luck was on my side, however, as he tripped on a severed leg and fell. The axe flew out of his hands, and I caught it in mine. The sound of Dr. Blackburn's spine severing was one of the most satisfying things that I've ever heard. Now I'm sitting in the hallway outside, trying to gather my wits. I'm glad this journal was tucked inside of my jumpsuit, because writing it down is keeping me sane. I haven't called the police. It'll make this too real. But sooner or later, I'll have to face the facts. Dr. Blackburn is dead. This experiment is over. It seems almost too good to be true. March 8, 1970. I'm alive. I called the police and they came. It turns out that they'd been searching for me for several days after my wife reported me missing. She was suspicious of Blackburn from the start, and all I can say is, well, I don't blame her. I was taken to the hospital, which is where I write this final entry. They'll discharge me soon, I hope. I want to get home to my family. The experiment, it It hasn't been reported in any newspapers. I'm sure that the government will cover it up. But at least Dr. Blackburn is dead. He can't hurt anyone ever again. Last night, Dr. Wilson visited me, and she was smiling. "Thank you," she said before she vanished. "I know she is at peace now. I just wish that she never had to die in the first place. I just wish that none of us ever agreed to take part in Blackburn's experiment in the first place."